Well, thanks for joining us today. We have a topic that's interesting if you are either an actor or performer or are just curious about acting and the process. We're going to talk about different acting techniques. Kimbra and I have both done lots of acting in our careers and taken different classes. And so we wanted to just talk about different acting techniques.
And your dog wants to say something too.
Yeah. And my dog, sorry, my dog's in the background and she is out of control. And she's barking at the neighbors and she wants to let me know that there are people outside.
That's smart. Oh, that's her job.
What are we going to do? So anyway, I studied Meisner, the Meisner technique with Joanne Barron, D.W. Brown's studio. Tom Patton and Annie Dreaman were my coaches, teachers, and it was a 2-year program. I made it through. Oh, it was rough. It was really a grueling class, grueling. You had to go I think it was 2 or 3 days a week, and you were not allowed to miss without a doctor's excuse. You had to have a doctor's excuse.
That is pretty intense, huh?
And then you were rehearsing in between the classes. So it was a full-time course. And at the end, you really felt like you accomplished something after you graduated. They have a formal graduation, and Dustin Hoffman spoke at our graduation.
That's nice.
Of course, me being the sap that I am, I cried the whole way through. And, I went through that 2-year program with some people, the whole program, like some were in the first year and not the second year, but quite a few of them, we were really close. We got to be really close. You get to know each other really intimately. So, anyway, so do you know anything about Meisner?
A lot of my friends have studied Meisner, and I believe it's mostly like there's a lot of reaction type things, right? Because I remember doing some of those exercises where you just look at the person and then you wait for them to say something. And
that's repetition. So you start out by making an observation about the other person. Like I would say, "You look really pretty today, Kimbra."
Oh, thank you.
Or "You look really pretty," and then you would respond, "Thank you," but. No, you would have to, you wouldn't say thank you. You would say, "I look really pretty today."
Right. Like
and I would say, yes, maybe not yes, but I would say, "You look really pretty today." And we would go back and forth until like feelings start coming up. And sometimes people end up yelling at each other. It's really interesting.
That is interesting.
Because you're really learning to bring your true feelings out instead of just the surface of what you're saying. So, I think it's called the method. But that's the main thing, is it goes by the repetition and being in the moment. You always want to be in the moment,
right?
And do more.
Hence Kellie and Kimbra in the moment.
Hence Kellie and Kimbra in the moment. The listening is the most important thing, because you're listening to react from the other person. Now, what I didn't like about that program was they would tell you not to memorize your lines so that you're more free to improvise or whatever.
Not at all.
Well, you can become familiar with them, but do not memorize them. That doesn't work for me. I have to memorize the lines, but then I can improvise and I can kind of go with the flow. But if I don't have, then I'm in my head thinking, what was that line? What am I supposed to say? And then when I did the soaps, they don't want you to improvise. You have to say verbatim, the words verbatim. You cannot go off script. Although Drake Hogestyn, I did a scene with him once and he improvised, but I had the lines memorized and I totally went with it. So it didn't mess me up. But what would mess me up more is if I didn't memorize the lines. So for me, I feel like we're all different. Our minds are built differently. So you should do whatever works for you.
Yeah, I'm like you in that way. I like to memorize and then just pretend like I don't know what they are. And that would always help me. Like I'd memorize it so well, but then I would act like, pick up the paper, like for an audition, for instance, and they would always say that's actually kind of impressive if people don't think, they don't know you memorized and you're like, but you really do. And then you're like, but when I studied at Lee Strasberg, I studied as a teenager in the teenage program, but it was basically the same thing, the method that everybody's heard about. And we also stressed being in the moment too, which is like a big, acting thing across the board through a lot of different methods. And we had to do a lot of strenuous exercises that would help you recreate feelings of a scene, which a lot of people have that don't like the method say you don't need all that stuff. You just, you say the lines and then you kind of act. But with the method, they would, there's several exercises like place, sensory stuff, you know, that you would have to recreate, that would supposedly help you recreate the memories of that scene that you may not necessarily have happened to you, but you kind of substitute, like, oh, I remember that reminds me when I was at my grandma's house and we did this. And then you would, you know, but the thing that the method that I really like, that I do think that adds a little bit of a next level, which I don't think a lot of methods, acting methods have taught, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but like what happens before the scene and all that kind of stuff. Like, I feel like a lot of other techniques concentrate on things between the two actors, but not so much like place and like what happened before. And for me, that always added
the character building. So we would have to build our character. You'd give it your character a past, a whole history. And I remember one thing. I remember one time in class, I learned, like, just tell me what you want from me and I will go with it. I'm not one of those people that always figures things out on my own. Sometimes I need a brick to fall on my head, or you got to spell it out for me. That's just the way I am. But once you do that, I'm good. So we were doing a scene and I don't know, I was preparing for something, some performance I was going to do or something. And I had this dress and I hung it on the door and then I started the scene. And at the end, the teacher was trying to get me to understand why I should have just worn the dress. Okay. But he didn't come out and say that. I swear he must have taken 15 minutes trying to get me to figure it out on my own. Because, you know, it's like therapy. They want you to figure it out on your own. Then you own it. And at the end, I was like, why didn't you just tell me to wear the dress? I would have figured it out. I would have understood why. So, you know, things like that. It's just a process, though. You like, we all learn differently.
Sure. Like, he wanted you to think, why would my character wear that dress?
I would have owned it more if I was in the dress. You know, your costume helps you feel the mood, you know, set the tone and everything. And I wasn't understanding that. So he was trying to explain it to me in all these roundabout ways that were not sinking in. I remember, and I think probably everybody in the class was sitting there going, wear the damn dress. And, you know, probably thinking, why is she not figuring this out? But I wasn't.
You know, I just thought of something. It's not really pertaining to what we're talking about, but it does in a way. I remember when I was taking acting classes, Madison Mason was a teacher I studied with for a while. And if you're listening, Madison, hello. But he studied with Milton Casalis at the Beverly Hills Playhouse, and he taught a class for a while. And I remember he said something to me once that kind of stuck with me. He said, when you go for auditions, don't be afraid, like, oh gosh, I hope they like me. That you want to help solve their casting problem. They want to like you, right? So now that I've done some producing myself and produced different projects, I realize that's so true. You know, you want to get this over with. You don't want to keep looking and looking and looking. So it kind of like takes off a little bit of that edge that people always, like, oh gosh, I'm bothering them. They've seen people better than me, but that's not true. You want to help them solve their problem, you know?
That's really good advice. Yeah. Just keep in mind, either you fit or you don't. It's like a date. It's like any job. You're either a good fit or you're not. And if you're not a good fit, you don't want it there. You don't want to wear clothes that don't fit you. So if you're not right for the part, that's the only thing, you know, you might not be the right look. You might not have the right emotional makeup for whatever reason. You might not match the other actor that they're going to pair you with. So that's really, you know, it's not so personal.
Yeah.
So you go in, you do what you think the character is and do your best, and then walk away and think about the next one, your next audition.
Yeah, because how many times, at least, I don't know if it was like this for you, but with me, when I would audition, sometimes the easiest thing, like I got the part right away because they just knew right away you were that person, you know? So like you said, oftentimes it's just like, they can tell that whether that's the character they were thinking of, whether you match their idea. So it's not so personal.
The image that they were thinking of or whatever it is. Yeah. And sometimes you can change their mind too. You can, you know, really knock them dead and own it. And sometimes even if you do, they might remember you for something else. They might think, wow, she was great, but just not right for this. And then they'll call you back later for something else. So that can happen too.
A lot. They used to do that a lot in Broadway. Like I remember a couple of my friends were auditioning for Broadway shows, and the people casting people would see them like 13 times. And then they finally, they kind of put him through the ringer, and then they finally put him in something. But, so, just try to demystify that auditioning process,
Yeah. I think the main thing is living through it, living through the experience. I remember, again, in acting class, we were doing improvisation, and the improv was that my dog had died. And everybody that knows me knows how much I love my dogs, except the one that is barking in the background right now that I want to choke. But anyway, so in the improvisation, my dog had died, and I was wailing, crying, screaming like I would if my dog died. And at the end, my acting teacher was like, well, first of all, the funny thing was my dog was named oh no, this was a different one. I'll tell the story separately. Anyway, my acting teacher was like, well, Kellie, that would be a really good comedy scene. And here I am crying my eyes, but I was so over the top. He goes, you maybe pull it back a little bit, because I was just out of control, crazy. Because I was so distraught. But when you're acting something, you also have to think of the audience and what they're going to get.
Course,
and in a different time, I had another scene where I was throwing my dog a birthday party, and my dog's name was Baby. And so I was decorating and doing all this birthday stuff. And at the end of the scene, after the scene was over, the acting teacher always talks to you about it. And he goes, why didn't you give the baby a name? And everybody in class started laughing because they knew my dog's Baby.
Name was Baby, yeah.
And I said, that is her name, Baby. And he was like, oh, okay. So anyway, those were like fun things. But yeah, I as far as auditioning, for me, again, you have to do what works for you and you have to figure it out. I have to memorize the lines. And I remember one time I was all cocky and confident. It was a small role. So I didn't get the sides until I showed up for the audition. They gave them to you there. So you couldn't memorize ahead of time. So I should have been studying. Instead, I sat and talked to this other girl the whole time, got in to do the reading and I was in the paper the whole time, just reading the lines. Like, I blew it. So for me, I learned that lesson, that it was better. I took a cold reading class with Brian Reese. Do you know Brian Reese?
No, but I remember that name. Yeah.
I love him. First of all, he's just an amazing guy. And it was a very nurturing environment. Like almost everybody in Hollywood that's made it has done his cold reading class, because it's like, once you've learned to act, then you want to learn to just cold read, just do the reading. And his classes were really, I really had some fun times in those classes. And it was a very, like I said, very nurturing environment. Everybody was happy to see everybody make it. Rick Springfield was in my class.
That's right. I remember you told me that story.
He was in my class, and that was in the beginning when I was horrible. I didn't know anything about acting. I hadn't studied yet. I went off and then studied Meisner and came back, and then it was okay. But
that's nice. How was he in class? Was he good?
Yeah. I didn't know better. I was totally, that was my first acting class. Oh, and then there was another one. And I really, when I knew we were going to talk about this, I tried to look her up. A lady on Ventura Boulevard, I think it's kind of near Casa Vega. And I don't know if she's still there. I mean, this was 20 years ago. It was one of the most fun classes ever. But as I've talked about before, acting, I didn't want it badly enough, which is what all my managers and agents told me. Not bad enough to suffer. Sure. I loved the class. I had a blast in the class. You had to get invited to be in that class. So it was like a really big deal. It was really intense. But I didn't go back because you had to stand outside and read your lines, and it was at night and it was cold. And I was like, oh, I don't want to go back. So I only went to a couple of her classes, but I really enjoyed those a lot.
For me, one thing that I observed after studying with the Lee Strasberg method, and then I went to the Third Street Theater, which was Susan Peretz was a teacher at Lee Strasberg, and she started her own theater company, and she's since passed away. But I learned so much from all that. But then I studied with this guy, Madison Mason, for a little while that I was telling you about. His was a real small group of maybe 10 people. And one thing I learned about myself was just getting up and doing it. Like I learned so much in his little class because we had so much freedom to do so much work. So for me, it's the doing always helps, even if you can get in a small little group that allows you to get up a lot. For me, that really was like a turning point because I was allowed to do so many try so many different scenes, you know?
Well, you get to experiment and get over any fear or anxiety, even though every performance brings up a little bit of anxiety. Remember that time we went to that Kellie Mullis's class?
Kellie.
And I was such a goof. I felt like a Lucille Ball, because remember, it was after I had the flu shot. I'd been in bed for a couple of years. So it was kind of like my first acting experience after that. And I was anyway, very goofy. But it was fun. It just felt good
I enjoyed that class.
Yeah, it was fun.
She was good. Yeah.
And nurturing. She's a sweetheart. She's such a sweet girl.
I don't know if she's still doing it, but
I don't know.
But
I don't know.
Acting classes are fun too. You get to like experiment with all these. It's just like being a kid again. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you get to do stuff. And I mean, not always fun. Sometimes you have to, do some heavy, intense scenes. But just
it's bonding.
Bonding.
I think it's bonding. Theater. whenever you do theater too, it's a very bonding experience.
It is. I mean, you guys. I'm sure you've come to a lot of those little plays. I did. I was so into it. And I still.
It's also. It helps you learn to collaborate, I think, because it's not, when you're doing a theatrical production, it's not all about you. And maybe different with music. I guess if you're in a band, you have to collaborate too.
True. True.
So if you're in a play or something, you're collaborating with other people and playing off of them. And if they're not good, maybe you're not good. It brings you down. So you always want to bring each other up. So I love it. I miss it sometimes too, but.
Yeah, it's a big time commitment too, though. When you're in a play or even an acting class, because you have to work on your lines before. At least 3 days a week.
A lot of work.
Maybe. And then you have to show up and you have to rehearse.
Yep. So. And then do the performance, and a lot goes into it. A lot more goes into it than people realize if you're not in that. An actor. I remember as a kid when somebody said you should be an actor, and I was like. And they said, but it's really hard. You have to go to school and everything. And to me, it wasn't a job. I was like, well, can't someone just tell you how to read the lines, how to say what you want to say? And I was really, when I first how I got involved in acting, when I got to LA, I was bartending and everybody was an actor. And so I got these pictures, and started saying I'm an actor because I wanted to feel, I just wanted to belong. I really wanted to, because that's most actors start out as a bartender or waiter or waitress to make money. And so I just wanted to feel like I belonged. And so I got these headshots and started telling people I was an actor. And then people would start giving me their cards and like, well, call me. And I'm like, really? Okay. And then I started calling. And then they started referring me to acting classes. And that's how I ended up at Joanne Baron and Brian Reese both. So
those were fun times, right?
Yeah, totally. Innocent. For me, it was such an innocence about it because I never took it seriously. I never thought it was going to be a job. But then I've told the story before when I dated the guy, Todd. He was Tad on Santa Barbara. And I really liked his lifestyle. And I thought, I'd like to be a soap opera actor. I think that would be really cool. And then, of course, auditioning for Days of Our Lives and getting the bigger and bigger roles. And one time it's funny because that's, you had to have your lines memorized. You had to know everything verbatim. So, I never made a mistake ever. It was a big deal to me. And the line, I usually had like 4 or 5 lines. And so I remember one time I did a scene and I did it perfectly. I was playing Deidre Hall's secretary and I didn't make any mistakes. And the guy, I was talking to this doctor and he didn't make any mistakes and they made us do it again. And they, told me, and he goes, now, when you say blah, 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 look up at him and smile. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And then later I was told by the casting assistant that they were trying to match me with somebody. They were trying to see if I had chemistry. And that's when they started all the matching of trying to match me with whatever, an actor on the show so that I could be a regular. But at first I was scared. I was like, I don't think I made any mistakes. But anywho, acting is a fun part of my past. I had a lot of fun, even the pursuit of it, the going to classes and going on the auditions and being disappointed sometimes, thinking I did better than I did, or thinking I did really great and didn't get hurt.
Yeah, but I think going back to what we were talking about earlier, I think a lot of the times it's not even about your performance. It's about whether if you were what they were thinking. you know?
Well, and I had quite a few casting directors call me back again. So you knew you did a good job, because if you job, they're never going to call you again.
Right.
So
exactly.
I knew that I had done a good job. I just hadn't found the right role, but I did. I felt like I did when I got on Days of Our Lives. So I was very happy with that. That was good for me.
It's funny because told you I was watching that Val Kilmer documentary, on Amazon Prime, and it was really haunting. And anybody who hasn't seen it, you should check it out. But it's funny because he kind of makes fun of soap opera acting a little bit in it, because he said when he was doing Batman,
it's people laugh at actors. It's not it's not a good respectable acting gig. But for me, like I said, I never cared about being an actor. It wasn't something that I had some burning desire, burning passion. And I will say, whoops, sorry. Hello. You didn't either. I will say that I saw some really great acting from soap opera actors. Stop.
Well, yeah.
I saw some really good acting. There's no rehearsal. You get your lines, you get on set and you do it. So I saw, Deidre Hall, who is amazing. Like I watched her because I played her secretary for a couple of years, and I worked with her a lot, and I'd watch her in the scenes and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I don't know how she just did that. So yeah, I saw some really good acting on soap operas. So a lot of them don't get the credit they should get.
Well, yeah. And a lot of them, like I had a family friend that was on one for years, and he'd studied very intensely in New York, and he was a very respected actor, but he said it was one of the harder gigs that he ever had because he had so many lines to remember, 8 pages, sometimes just the night before.
Yeah.
And it was just really...
like in a movie, they'd spend 3 weeks on one scene. And on the soaps, it's like bam, bam, bam. They call you to the set. You do but see, I liked that because I'm like, I'd be gone, I'd work 4 hours in a day. And of course I had smaller roles, so I didn't have, a lot to carry on my shoulders. So it was easy for me. Maybe if I had become a regular, then I wouldn't have liked it so much, but I think I would have liked it.
I mean, the money was good, so,
yep.
And it's like banker's hours, you either do 8 to 12:30 or
that's what I like. And you're not so famous, that you can't go out or go anywhere. Todd used to joke because we'd go out all over Hollywood. And I remember, everybody always knew me. And they go, you're the bartender. Because I worked at the hot Hollywood nightclubs where everybody wanted to go. And
she did. I went to one of those.
I did. And so a lot of people knew me as the bartender. And he laughed. The bartender. Like a soap opera, and everybody knows you. But it was just, in LA. It was out and about in Hollywood. Not everybody watches soaps either. So anyway.
And now aren't they kind of... I mean, there's a few left.
I don't even know if any are on TV anymore. I don't really know if they've gone to the internet or... you really can get caught up in them. I watched The Bold and the Beautiful, The Young and the Restless. Then I got caught up in Days of Our Lives when I was on it, watching the show, and the stories. It is, I think that, I think they're fun. I remember sometimes the lines were real goofy and corny, and you make fun of me for being corny. So, but I'd be like, oh, how do I say this? And I realized, I'd be like, why are they writing this stuff? But I realized it's, like they always say the woman I love. The men on the shows would be like, the woman I love. I'm like, call her your girlfriend or your wife. But it's like, that's what women want to hear. So they're writing for the women that are watching them,
Right. Romanticizing. But I think that the reality shows, aren't they like the new soap operas in a way?
Yep.
The reality shows.
Yeah. All the dirt drama. And people want to believe that they're real, even though they're not. They're very scripted.
Sure.
Yep. I would say they've taken the place, and actors aren't so famous anymore. Even in big movie stars aren't such movie stars anymore because it's just all watered down. There's so many, vehicles now.
That's true.
So many different mediums for entertainment.
Yeah. Amazon Prime and all those different things that you get through the internet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, there's just so many different channels and so much to pick from. And so there's not any, like, there used to be 20 to 50 famous people at one time. Now there's thousands. So it's different. But my advice to somebody who wants to be in the theater is to really study, find the class that works for you, and don't just go to one class. After I finished in my 2-year program with Meisner, a lot of people that was it. They were done. They thought they were done. And I kept studying. I kept taking different classes and workshops, 6-week workshops and different cold reading classes. I went back to Brian Reese because I felt like there was still more to learn and more to know. And, what works in one scene doesn't work in another scene. So my advice is study with as many different people as you can. Commit. I mean, you don't want to jump around too much, but study with different coaches, I think, is important.
And, for instance, Al Pacino, I have a friend that knew him, and he was studying for the longest time, even until like maybe, let's say 15 years ago, after he'd already won an Academy Award. He still studies with this one guy. I can't remember his name, Charlie something. And he goes to his classes, or he was up until like, I guess 10 years ago or so, but so he was continuously, which I kind of admire, people that are already, done very, very, very well, and they're still studying.
Well, it keeps you sharp too. Yeah. You want it's like you're an athlete and you want to keep sharp. You want to keep your emotions alive, I guess.
Yeah, because
life can beat you down and numb you.
And also you can, once you work a lot, you can sort of maybe play little tricks to kind of like, get there because you know how to do this stuff. But somebody who wants to stay relevant and, current, maybe they want to keep utilizing their tools as opposed to just knowing, oh, I can get away with this if I just, read the lines, and I know how to look kind of sad, So
I think it's a sign that someone really loves the craft too. They enjoy it, which, the greats, I would imagine, should. Although, it depends on your process, because some of them have said, playing a certain role that was really dark or something really affected their psyche, because they lived through it. And so that, your mind doesn't know the difference between playing and reality. So you've really, when you've lived through a scene, you've really experienced that in life. And if it's a bad situation, then it could stay with you. You get PTSD or whatever. So some actors don't like that part of it, and they don't want to do so many dark roles.
Yeah. I had that happen to me. I was doing this play where I was supposed to commit suicide every night, and I really drudge up all these memories to make me think, and after that was over, I was like, oh man, I'm just going to do comedies for a while, because it was just
I remember
sad.
You saying that before. You're like, comedy's so much better.
Yeah, because I would be listening in my dressing room with the the little earbuds and listening to sad music and like, I'm dying.
Yeah. Yeah. It brings you. That's true. I was never, I would say, comedic on purpose, but I did some comedy, and the high afterwards was way better than anything dramatic. Like an Oscar-winning dramatic performance is not nearly as satisfying, in my opinion, as a really fun comedic performance where you've actually made people laugh.
Yeah.
That is like the greatest high.
Yeah. So, even like I told you, Meryl Streep, I think she was saying, she does tired of doing these heavy dramatic things. That's why she started doing comedy more, because she said, I'm tired of giving up a pound of flesh every time I do something.
Yeah.
Comedy, it's more like you're up afterwards. And when you hear, if you make people laugh, it's just the most exhilarating feeling.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. I think so.
So yeah, I think the bottom line is find the process that works best for you, but keep experimenting, right?
Yeah. Try different ones. And the more tools you have in your toolbox, the better you'll be. So you can play, a bigger variety of roles if you've studied and learned how to expand, what you know how to do as an actor, calling on yourself emotionally. But put some comedy in there too, because you never know. You might be funnier than you think you are. You might find those places.
That's true. And you can check out different classes, usually they'll allow you to audit. So experiment and check out different ones, because not every class is going to resonate with you. You're not going to like some teachers in the way they teach, So before you pluck down all that money, you should definitely check them out.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Agreed with that too. Yeah. So, but just do it. Try it and do it without thinking you're going to be this big star and you're going to make it. Because I know so many people that were like, I'm going to be a big star and I'm going to make it. And they're not. They're, a waiter somewhere. don't go into it with that idea. Who was saying that? Was John Levin was saying that about music. Don't go into it thinking you're going to be successful. Go into it for the fun of it and the bonding experience with your peers.
For the passion of it, and some people, conversely, you may find out you hate acting. Some people may tell you that you should get into acting because you're really good looking or something. But sometimes people try it and they go, oh gosh, no, I just never felt comfortable. And, because it's kind of, you have to be real vulnerable.
You're burying your soul. Yep.
Yeah. So there you go. So try it and see if you like it.
Just do it. Just do
it.
Yeah. So that's our advice on acting techniques and, going to Hollywood or New York. New York is really a good place, a serious place to study doing a theater.
I kind of regret not living in New York for at least a couple of years and I lived other places, but New York would have been such a great experience.
Well, the sad thing for me is I lived there for a year, but I wasn't an actor. I didn't get involved at all. I did a few little things, but I wasn't serious. But LA is, like I said, where I got the bug because everybody else that I knew was an actor. And I was like, well, I want to feel like I fit in. So,
you want to belong.
Anyway, get yourself a headshot and take some classes and see where it goes. You never know. It could be fun. But the other thing, just a little side note, being famous is really not, I don't think, the most pleasant experience. There are a lot of drawbacks to being famous. So I really wouldn't do it for that reason. That's not the reason. I don't think that's the reward, the biggest reward. And even the money, money comes and goes. Do it for the experience. That's what my advice would be.
Actually, I think being famous doesn't sound like a good thing at all, in my opinion, but sometimes it's the byproduct of, pursuing, like you're in these blockbuster films and you become famous. But once people get to that level, I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't like that feeling, because wherever and especially nowadays, because everybody has their, smartphones.
No, it's going to be awful. You're written about, people are saying things about you that aren't true, and there's nothing you can do about it. Everybody wants to talk to you, and sometimes you don't want to talk to everybody. You just want to be left alone. I would have been a terrible famous person. So that worked out. But that's why, again, I knew that I didn't want to be famous. I wanted to be on a soap opera because I thought it would be fun. So yeah, just think about that. Don't go in it for that. If you're going into acting to be famous, then there's probably something missing inside that you maybe need to work on and figure out why that appeals to you. Why are you looking for adulation and love from people you don't even know? So maybe
a
go to
void
therapy.
of some sort. And some people take acting class as therapy.
Oh, for me, it was total. Yeah, definitely a lot of working through issues through acting class.
Why do you feel
about
this
yourself?
way, Kellie? Yeah. So anyway, all right. Well, we'll see you next time. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for stopping in and listening to what we have to say about acting. And if you're going to do it, good luck.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.